call came at 2:17 a.m., the kind of hour when no good news ever arrives. My hand trembled as I answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is Mercy Hospital. Your son James has been admitted with a suspected brain aneurysm. Please come right away." The world seemed to tilt. I had already lost my husband a decade earlier, but nothing prepared me for this. James, my brilliant, kind-hearted only child, couldn't possibly be gone. I arrived still in my nightgown under a coat, hair uncombed, heart racing. A serious-faced doctor led me to a small consultation room and spoke the words every parent dreads. There was no warning. "Nothing could have been done. Your son has passed." Hours blurred as paperwork and impossible decisions came at me in waves. Near noon, James's wife Sophia finally arrived, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, manicured nails tapping her phone. "There was traffic," she murmured, barely looking at me. I had already called their son's school and arranged care for 8-year-old Lucas. Sophia hadn't thought to. Sadly, that was typical. "James is gone," I said quietly. Her mouth formed a perfect O of surprise, a hand rising to her throat in a gesture that felt rehearsed. "He was fine yesterday," she said, voice catching. For a fleeting instant, I saw something, relief, calculation, before she masked it with a look of shock. Throughout the day, she stepped aside to make hushed phone calls, turning to me only when the hospital needed decisions. "You know what he'd want better than I do," she said lightly, as if detached. By evening, Thomas Bennett, James's closest friend and attorney, arrived, his grief unmistakable. "We'll need to meet soon," he told Sophia gently. "There are matters in James's will that need attention." Sophia straightened, dabbing at eyes that remained dry. "Of course. Tomorrow, perhaps. We should settle things quickly for Lucas's sake." Her mention of my grandson pierced the fog. "I'll go with you to tell him," I said. "That's not necessary," she replied too quickly. "My son and I will handle it." It was a familiar pattern, Sophia asserting control when convenient, while leaving the real parenting to James, and often to me. She added softly, "He adores you. He'll need his grandmother more than ever now." The words sounded caring, yet I could sense the quiet maneuvering beneath them. As we left, I caught her checking her reflection in a window, then making another call. In that unguarded moment, her face showed no grief, only cool calculation, as if planning the next move in a chess game. My heart broke again. I had lost my beloved son, and my grandson was now in the care of a woman who seemed to view tragedy as inconvenience, perhaps even opportunity. What I didn't yet know was that James had anticipated all of this and taken careful steps to protect both Lucas and me. In the days ahead, as I arranged the funeral and tried to breathe through my grief, I would uncover the depth of his foresight and the true extent of Sophia's deception. That night, returning to an empty house, I held a childhood photo of James to my chest and whispered a promise. "For Lucas, I will stay strong. For Lucas." A mother's instinct. Something in Sophia's behavior set off every protective instinct I had. My grandson had just lost his father. I refused to let him lose his grandmother, too. Deep down, I sensed he was going to need me more than ever. A midnight call had already upended my world, yet Sophia's reaction to my son's passing left a knot of unease. What had James kept hidden about their troubled marriage? And what quiet steps had he taken to shield us before his final day? I couldn't know it then, but my hardest test as a mother was only beginning. At 65, I've attended many farewells and know genuine sorrow when I see it. People grieve in countless ways. Some collapse, some grow silent, but true grief can't be faked. From the front pew, I watched my daughter-in-law deliver a flawless performance. Sophia wore a tailored black dress that was both tasteful and striking. Her hair fell in soft waves, makeup perfectly understated, a monogrammed handkerchief dabbing at eyes that never truly brimmed. She leaned against me at practiced intervals, whispering lines like, "He would have appreciated such a turnout." To everyone else, we appeared united, the grieving widow and the grieving mother, but I felt how lightly she rested on my shoulder, ready to straighten the instant someone influential approached. I saw her eyes sweep the room, weighing each mourner's status, her tone shifting subtly when she greeted James's wealthier clients compared with his childhood friends. My attention stayed on Lucas, my grandson, sitting on my other side. His small body shook with real, unfiltered sobs. I kept an arm around him, offering quiet comfort as he stared at the casket. Is Daddy really in there? He whispered during a lull. His body is, I explained softly. But the part that made him Daddy, his love, his thoughts, his spirit, that's still with you. Lucas nodded, understanding more than many adults. I can still feel him sometimes, he said. I believe he's with you, I replied, blinking back tears. Sophia leaned across me. Lucas, sit up straight. People are watching. His little shoulders stiffen. That concern for appearances, not his feelings, was exactly why James had left Lucas in my care so often this past year. After the service, a stream of mourners shared stories of my son's quiet generosity. Colleagues spoke of his integrity, clients of his compassion. One woman told me he lowered his fees when he learned she was struggling, then helped her rebuild her life. An elderly man said James cared about fairness, not just billable hours. Their words were bittersweet comfort. My son had lived his values, and I stored each memory for the day Lucas would want to hear them. Meanwhile, Sophia held several whispered conversations, one with a tall, impeccably dressed man I didn't know. When I approached, they separated smoothly. This is Richard Harlow, one of James's real estate partners, she said. My condolences, Mrs. Reynolds, he offered with a brief, cool handshake. Something in his tone felt off, and the way Sophia's hand brushed his arm suggested a familiarity that went beyond business. My professor's mind filed the detail away, even through grief. By evening, exhaustion settled in. Lucas slept on a couch in a quiet side room, worn out from tears. I draped his small suit jacket over him like a blanket. That's when Thomas Bennett, James's longtime friend and attorney, approached. Eleanor, may we speak privately? In a secluded corner, he lowered his voice. James left very specific instructions. I can't share everything yet, but he asked me to tell you one thing right away. Trust your instincts about Lucas. Does that mean anything to you? I glanced at my sleeping grandson, then toward Sophia, who was checking her makeup while giving distracted nods to well-wishers. Yes, I said slowly. It means everything. Good, Thomas replied. We'll meet tomorrow about the will. But James wanted you to know that first. A will full of secrets. Thomas paused, choosing each word with care. Arrangements have been made for both of you, he said quietly. Before I could ask what that meant, Sophia approached, her polite smile firmly in place. Thomas, I hope we can wrap everything up quickly, she said. I'm thinking of taking Lucas away for a while. A healing trip. Best to settle the estate promptly. Tomorrow at 2, Thomas replied evenly. As we prepared to leave, I lifted Lucas into my arms, his slight weight both fragile and comforting. Sophia didn't offer to help. Instead, she scrolled through her phone. 17 missed calls, she sighed. So many arrangements to handle. I studied her calm face. No swollen eyes, no trace of the heavy sorrow crushing me from within. What arrangements? I asked, keeping my tone mild. Life goes on, Eleanor, she said without looking up. Bills, accounts, notifications. James handled everything. Now it's on me, not us. Now we'll figure it out together for Lucas. Just me. When Sophia asked if Lucas could stay with me that night, to give her space, I felt a chill of unease, mixed with something else. Almost like James himself urging me to stay watchful. We're going to be okay, Lucas, I whispered as I buckled him into my car. Somehow, we're going to be okay. I had no idea how prophetic that promise would be. The next day, the reading of the will revealed a very different story. Sophia's polished composure slipped for the first time as she sat across from Thomas Bennett in his office. I watched her expression flicker. First confidence, then confusion, and finally a controlled flash of anger. Not exactly, Thomas said calmly, continuing to read. Mr. Reynolds left you the lake house, the Meridian investment portfolio, and a life insurance policy of $500,000. By most standards, nearly $1 million was substantial, but it clearly fell short of whatever Sophia expected. The family home at 1742 Oakwood Drive, Thomas went on, along with both vehicles and the First National account, were bequeathed to his mother, Eleanor Reynolds. Sophia gripped the chair arms. That's impossible. We purchased that house together. It's marital property. Thomas slid a document across the desk. The house was bought solely in James's name before your marriage. It was never converted to joint ownership. The deed and mortgage confirm this. I kept my face neutral, though my heart raced. James had never mentioned these details. The family home, where Lucas built his treehouse. Cars, even a bank account I hadn't known about, all left to me. What about Lucas's college fund? Sophia pressed. James always said he was setting money aside for that. He did, Thomas replied. A dedicated trust for Lucas's education and care. Eleanor has been named sole trustee. Sophia's eyes narrowed as the room fell silent. I could almost see the calculations behind her calm exterior. Totals, options, next moves. This isn't what we discussed, she said finally, her voice smooth but tight. James and I had a plan. This makes no sense. The will was updated 3 months ago, Thomas said evenly. James requested these changes himself. Everything is legally executed and witnessed. 3 months ago? Sophia repeated, her tone sharpening. He never mentioned that to me. That was his right, Thomas answered. I stayed quiet, absorbing the revelation. 3 months earlier, James had quietly reshaped his will, protecting Lucas and me while limiting Sophia's control. Sophia turned toward me, her expression shifting to a practiced look of appeal, but I could see the truth behind her eyes, and I understood exactly why my son had taken such careful precautions. A letter that changed everything. Eleanor, you know, James would have wanted his family to stay in their home, Sophia said smoothly. You already have your own place. Surely you don't plan to take our house from Lucas. It was a clever play, casting me as the one removing stability from my grandson, rather than the person simply honoring James's wishes. I recognized the tactic but kept my voice calm. I'm as surprised as you are, Sophia, I answered honestly. I need time to process all of this. Thomas Bennett, James's attorney, continued reviewing the remaining details. Personal effects, charitable gifts, prearranged funeral expenses. All the while, Sophia texted beneath the table, her expression a flawless mask of polite sorrow, interrupted only by flashes of calculation. When the meeting ended, Thomas asked me to stay. Sophia left with a tight smile and a pointed, "We'll talk soon." As the door closed, Thomas handed me a sealed envelope. James wanted you to have this privately, he said, his voice softening. Take it home. Read it when you're ready. And Eleanor, trust him. He knew exactly what he was doing. In the lobby, I paused when I spotted Sophia on the phone, her back turned. Her voice was low but sharp. Completely blindsided me, she hissed. The house, the cars, even Lucas's education fund. No, I don't think he suspected anything. Must have been his mother's influence. Of course I'm going to fight it, Richard. 10 years in this family, I deserve more than a vacation property and some insurance money. I slipped out silently, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. James had prepared for something I was only beginning to grasp. Back in my modest home, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, James's handwriting instantly recognizable. Mom, if you're reading this, the unthinkable has happened. I'm sorry to leave you with this burden, but there's no one I trust more. My marriage has been failing for some time, and it's become something darker. I fear for Lucas's future and for your safety. I've arranged everything to protect you both. The house, cars, and funds aren't for you alone. They're tools to give Lucas one stable, loving parent when I'm gone. Sophia will fight this. She'll try to manipulate you. Don't reveal what you know. Watch and document everything. Thomas holds the rest of my instructions and evidence. I love you. You taught me to see people clearly and to plan ahead. Please use those gifts now to protect my son. Fresh tears blurred the words as I pressed the letter to my chest. Even in his final months, James had been thinking of us, planning for Lucas's future. My mission was clear: protect my grandson, quietly, strategically, and without tipping my hand. 3 days later, Lucas's innocent question cut deeper than any legal battle. Grandma, when is Dad coming back? I set down my coffee and held his small hand. Remember what we talked about, sweetheart? Daddy's body isn't here anymore, but the part that made him Daddy, his love, is always with you. I know, he whispered. But sometimes I wake up and think he's making pancakes like on Saturdays. I swallowed hard. Would you like me to make pancakes on Saturdays now? They won't be the same, he murmured, then added softly. But I'd like that. I was staying at James's house, my house now according to the will, to care for Lucas while Sophia handled what she vaguely called important paperwork. In truth, I suspected she was already meeting with her own lawyer. After dropping Lucas at school, I returned to find Sophia waiting in the kitchen, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that screamed business, not mourning. "Eleanor," she said, greeting me with a practice kiss on the cheek. "I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about arrangements going forward." I matched her polite tone, adopting the quiet strategy I knew James would expect. "Of course," I replied evenly. Inside, I could feel the next round of this silent chess game beginning. The coffee conversation. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, keeping my voice calm as Sophia settled at the kitchen island. My kitchen now, though I didn't say it aloud. "This is all so overwhelming," she sighed, watching me move about. "The paperwork, the accounts, the decisions. I can imagine," I replied softly, hiding the memory of the furious phone call I'd overheard the day before. "How can I help?" For a split second she looked surprised, then her practiced warmth returned. "You're so kind, Eleanor." "Actually, I've been thinking about what's best for everyone, especially Lucas." "Here it comes," I thought. "This house is full of memories of James," she continued, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "Every room reminds Lucas of what he's lost. It might be healthier for both of us to start fresh somewhere else." I placed a mug of coffee in front of her and kept my expression open. "You're considering a move?" "I found a lovely condo downtown near the cultural district, great schools close to the museum and library. But," she stirred her coffee deliberately, "with the way James arranged things, I'll need your cooperation." I tilted my head as though surprised. "The will must be a misunderstanding," she said, tone sharpening before she softened it again. "James would never have put me in such a difficult position. My attorney says we could avoid a long legal fight if you'd simply transfer the house to me, as James would have wanted." I widened my eyes, feigning thoughtful consideration. "I see. And what does your attorney say about the fact that James updated his will only 3 months ago, specifically to set things up this way?" A flicker of irritation crossed her face before the mask returned. James wasn't himself then. He was stressed, overworked. He wasn't thinking clearly about our family's best interests. "That must have been hard for you," I said gently, giving her room to keep talking. "It was," she sighed dramatically. "Which is why I believe he'd want us to correct this oversight, for Lucas's sake." There it was, invoking Lucas as the trump card. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time. "I understand your concern," I said at last, "but making big decisions in the middle of grief isn't wise. Let's give it a little time." Her smile tightened. "Of course. The condo won't be available for long. It would be easier for Lucas to start healing in a new place." I recognized the tactic, false urgency. "Why don't we ask Lucas how he feels?" I suggested lightly. "He might find comfort here, where he has so many memories of his father." "Children don't always know what's best," she countered smoothly. "That's why adults decide. He's already dealing with enough." James's letter echoed in my mind. "She'll try to manipulate me." "You're probably right," I conceded, watching relief flicker in her eyes. "Let me think it over for a few days." "This is still a shock. Take the weekend," she said, clearly believing she'd gained ground. Then, lowering her voice, "I'm worried about finances with things as they stand. I'm finding credit card bills, the mortgage." The mortgage was legally mine now, but I kept that to myself. "I'd be happy to help review the accounts," I offered. "Maybe we can go through them together." "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "I just mean that resolving the house situation would free the equity James and I built for Lucas's education and well-being." She didn't realize how transparent she was to someone trained to read human behavior. "Let's talk more next week," I said, rising as if comforted. "I need to rest before picking up Lucas from school." After she left, the house was silent. I sat alone, replaying every word. Sophia believed I was a grief-stricken, passive woman she could outmaneuver. For now, I needed her to keep believing exactly that. I picked up my phone and called Thomas Bennett. Secrets uncovered. "I need to know exactly what evidence James collected and how we can build on it," I told Thomas without preamble. "This is going to be a longer game than I expected." Sophia had wasted no time trying to pressure me into signing over the house. She used Lucas's well-being as leverage, expecting a grief-stricken mother-in-law to fold. James warned me she'd fight dirty, but he didn't know his mother could fight smarter. The performance had begun, and I intended to be the better actor. 1 week after the funeral, Lucas looked up at me with worried eyes as I tucked him into bed. "Grandma, Mom says I have to go with her to Miami next weekend." "But I don't want to." This was the first I'd heard of any trip. "Miami?" I kept my voice casual while my thoughts raced. That sounds like an adventure. Lucas shook his head, hugging his stuffed dinosaur. She says her friend Richard has a boat and will stay at a fancy hotel. But I have my science project due Monday. Dad always helped with my projects. Did you tell your mom about the project? She said I can skip it. Teachers understand when you're dad, but Dad wouldn't want me to skip it. He always said commitments matter. Your father was right, I said, smoothing his hair. Let me talk to your mom tomorrow. We'll figure it out. After Lucas fell asleep, I called Thomas on the private number he'd given me. Miami? His voice sharpened when I explained. With Richard Harlow, I added. You know him? He's the real estate developer I mentioned, Thomas said carefully. The one James had concerns about. Eleanor, did you install the home monitoring system I recommended? Yes. Cameras in the common areas, alerts to my phone. Good. Keep it running. That recording capability may prove valuable. I'm sending you something tomorrow. Open it only when you're alone. The next morning, a courier delivered a sealed envelope. Inside were copies of text messages James had quietly obtained. Messages between Sophia and a contact saved as RH, dating back 8 months. The story they told was damning. A long-running affair, complaints about James working late, talk of being trapped, and repeated references to Lucas as the complication. Most chilling were notes from just 2 months ago. RH, how long do we stay in limbo? You said you were ready to leave. Sophia, patience. Jay's name is on everything important. Need to get the financials in better position first. Working on it. Work. The Cayman property won't wait forever. Perfect for a fresh start. Few more months and everything falls into place. My hands trembled. These weren't simple flirtations, they were plans. Another document was a private investigator's report. Photos of Sophia and Richard entering a hotel together. Receipts for expensive gifts, and notes on Richard's questionable business dealings. The final item was a handwritten note from James to Thomas, dated 3 weeks before his death. Tom, enclosed is everything I've gathered. Not sure of my next steps. Confronting her could risk my time with Lucas. Protect him above all. We'll meet next Thursday to discuss options. James died on Tuesday. That meeting never happened. Armed with this knowledge, I waited for Sophia to arrive Friday to collect Lucas's overnight bag. Lucas mentioned a trip to Miami, I asked lightly. Just a quick weekend getaway, she said, glancing at her designer watch. Good for him to have a distraction. He's worried about missing his science project, I said casually. You know how James valued academics. Her smile tightened. A weekend off won't hurt his grades. The school psychologist recommended new experiences to help with grief. I nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Though a boat trip with Richard might be a bit much so soon after losing his father. Lucas seems anxious. Her eyes narrowed at the mention of Richard's name. Lucas will be fine, she replied smoothly. Children are adaptable. Inside, I noted every flicker of her expression. James had warned me, and I was ready for the next move in this quiet war, the Miami weekend. Children are adaptable, Sophia said smoothly. They are, I agreed, though familiar routines can help after a loss. I'm happy to keep Lucas here so he can finish his science project, if that makes things easier. I watched the quick calculation behind her eyes. Freedom for a weekend versus the image of a devoted mother. That's thoughtful, but unnecessary, she decided. This trip is about mother-son bonding. Of course, I replied, then added casually. Oh, one more thing. Do you know the password to James's computer? Lucas wants to find photos for a memory book his counselor suggested. I don't keep track of James's passwords, she said lightly. Ask Thomas to check his office files. I'd already found the password list in James's desk, so her answer went straight into my mental file. Another small favor, I said as she reached for her purse. Lucas's teacher is looking for parent volunteers for next Wednesday's field trip to the Science Museum. Since I'm not officially a parent, I thought you might want to sign up. Kids who've lost a parent often need extra support on outings like that. Wednesday. I have a full-day spa appointment, she said with a practiced sigh. Self-care is part of grief, you understand. Of course, I answered warmly. I'll explain to his teacher. When she left with a promise to return Sunday evening, I called Thomas Bennett immediately. She's taking Lucas to Miami with Richard Harlow, I reported. I need to document this trip. Already handled, Thomas said. The same investigator James hired is on it. Photographs, timelines, everything. Miami will show her priorities clearly. And if Lucas is upset afterward, make sure his counselor notes it. Every reaction is evidence. I hated the thought of treating my grandson's feelings as evidence, but I understood. Protecting Lucas meant building a careful record. The weekend stretched quiet and tense. I moved through James's house, my house now, feeling like an actor in a play James had written before his death. Sophia played the grieving widow plotting a future with her lover. I played the gentle, accommodating mother-in-law while gathering proof. Even Lucas, without realizing, offered crucial clues in his innocent remarks. The only person not performing was James, whose absence filled every room. I touched his framed photo on the mantel. "I'm watching, James," I whispered, "just like you asked." Late Sunday evening, Lucas trudged inside, hours later than promised. His shoulders were sunburned, his face pale with fatigue. "How was your trip, sweetheart?" I asked, kneeling to his level. Lucas shrugged, eyes down. "The boat made me sick." "He's being dramatic," Sophia interjected without looking up from her phone. "Just a little motion sickness." The resort was 5-star. Perfect weather. He had a wonderful time. Lucas's expression told a different story, but he said only, "Can I go to my room?" "Of course," I said gently. "I'll bring you some ginger tea for your stomach." He climbed the stairs slowly. I noticed he wasn't carrying his backpack. "Did Lucas forget his school bag?" I asked. "It got wet on the boat," Sophia said with a dismissive wave. "Nothing important inside." "His science project materials were in that bag," I pointed out, keeping my tone mild. "He can get an extension." "I'll write a note." She finally looked up, eyes challenging me. "Richard sends his regards, by the way," she added, almost daring me to react. "He was disappointed you couldn't join us." I kept my face neutral, though her brazenness tightened my stomach. "How thoughtful," I said evenly. "I hope you enjoyed your weekend." "Very much," she replied with a small, triumphant smile. "Richard has wonderful connections in Miami. We're considering investment opportunities there." "How nice," I murmured, already filing away every word. I should check on Lucas. Patterns of neglect. Upstairs I found Lucas sitting on his bed, staring at a photo of his father. The room was exactly as he'd left it on Friday. Homework spread across the desk, untouched. "Want to tell me about the trip?" I asked gently, sitting beside him. His lower lip trembled. "Mom was on her phone the whole time." She and Richard went out and left me with the hotel babysitter, even at night. My heart clenched. "The whole night?" He nodded. 2 nights. The babysitter fell asleep with the TV on. I woke up and didn't know where I was. I called Mom's room, but she didn't answer. I kept my voice steady. "That must have been scary." "Richard has a big boat," Lucas continued, picking at the comforter. "He wouldn't let me touch anything. He said kids mess things up." Mom laughed. "Dad always let me help steer our little boat." Each detail was another piece of evidence, another sign that Sophia's priorities lay elsewhere. "Did you tell Mom you were upset?" Lucas shook his head. "She was having fun. In the car, she said it's important for her to be happy again, and I shouldn't make things harder." The idea of an 8-year-old being made responsible for his mother's happiness filled me with quiet fury, but I focused on comforting him. "It's okay to have feelings," I told him, pulling him close. "Your feelings matter, even when adults are busy." "Dad always asked about my feelings," he whispered. "I know, sweetheart, I know." After settling him with ginger tea and salvaging what we could of his science project, I documented every revelation in the journal Thomas had urged me to keep. One incident could be dismissed. A pattern could not. Over the next 2 weeks, that pattern grew clear. Sophia stayed out late, leaving Lucas with me more often. She missed his school conference, sending me instead with a vague excuse. She forgot to refill his asthma prescription, forcing an emergency pharmacy run after a mild attack at soccer practice. The home security system captured more. Sophia bringing Richard into the house late at night, both of them clearly tipsy. Unaware, Lucas was awake. Sophia prompting Lucas, "Remember to tell Grandma you had a great time," after outings spent mostly on her business calls. Repeated promises to attend his activities, broken without apology. I continued my role as the supportive, slightly naive mother-in-law, offering help, expressing understanding when she blamed grief brain, and never confronting her directly. 3 weeks after James's death, she appeared unexpectedly while I was helping Lucas with homework, dressed for an evening out rather than a night with her son. "Eleanor, we need to discuss the house situation," she said smoothly. "Of course," I replied amiably. "I've been meaning to ask what you'd like to keep when I move in permanently next month." Her perfectly shaped brows lifted. "Move in?" I thought we agreed the house should be sold. I don't recall agreeing to that, I said mildly. Lucas's therapist recommends stability. Familiar surroundings help children heal. Her expression hardened before she forced a concerned smile. I'm worried about you. This house is too large, too expensive to manage alone. James left it free and clear, I answered casually. No mortgage to worry about, and years of running a university department taught me plenty about handling big responsibilities. I watched the subtle shift in her eyes, a quiet recalculation. Sophia was beginning to realize I wasn't the fragile, grief-stricken woman she thought she could outmaneuver. The dinner gambit. By now, Sophia had realized I wasn't the fragile, easily swayed mother-in-law she'd expected. Still, I kept my tone warm and non-threatening. We'll discuss it more later, she said smoothly. I need to run. Important dinner meeting. Lucas has already eaten. Bed by 9. After she left, I sat with Lucas at the kitchen table, helping him rebuild the science project he'd lost in Miami. As he carefully glued planets into place, he looked up suddenly. Grandma, are you going to live here now instead of Mom? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask, sweetheart? He focused on the tiny Mars he was positioning. Mom told someone on the phone that you're trying to take the house from her. She said you were being selfish. I chose my words with care. Your dad wanted everyone to have a safe place to live. Sometimes adults disagree about details. I want you to stay, he said simply. You help me with homework and remember my medicine. You make real food, not just order pizza. His straightforward honesty, so innocent, yet so aware, hardened my resolve. This wasn't just about honoring James's wishes. It was about protecting a child who clearly understood the difference between appearance and genuine care. I'll do my very best to stay close no matter what, I promised. The next morning, Sophia announced her latest plan as if it were nothing. I'm thinking of taking Lucas to my parents in Arizona for a few weeks, she said over coffee. Exactly 4 weeks after James's death? That's quite a distance, I replied evenly. What about Lucas's school? He can miss a few weeks. Children are resilient. The phrase, one James had used thoughtfully, sounded hollow from her lips, a convenient excuse. When were you thinking of going? Next week, ideally, she said, glancing at her watch. My parents are begging to see him, and frankly, I could use the support. Being a sudden single mother is overwhelming. I swallowed the observation that she'd been acting single for months. That's understandable, I said instead. Though his counselor mentioned that consistency is important, her eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting I don't know what's best for my own son? Not at all, I backpedaled gently. I'm sure you've considered everything. Her tone softened, almost conspiratorial. Actually, Eleanor, I wanted to discuss something important. Could we have dinner tonight? Just the two of us? I'll have my assistant watch Lucas. Your assistant? Richard's assistant? Melissa, she corrected smoothly. She's wonderful with children. She's helped with Lucas before. Another mental note from my journal. Sophia was leaving Lucas with her lover's employee rather than his grandmother, who lived 15 minutes away. I'd be happy to watch him, I offered. But dinner sounds lovely. What did you want to discuss? Everything, she said vaguely. The house, Lucas's future, how we move forward. I think I found a solution that works for everyone. Her confident smile told me she believed she'd crafted an irresistible proposal. That evening I arrived at the upscale restaurant she'd chosen, a place with minimalist decor, tiny portions, and prices meant to impress. Sophia was already seated, elegant in a designer dress that balanced tasteful mourning with high fashion. Eleanor, thank you for coming, she said, greeting me with an airy kiss on the cheek. I ordered a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. James always said it was your favorite. It wasn't. I smiled anyway, settling in for the next move in this quiet war, a war over more than a house. It was about the future of a little boy who deserved far better than a mother who treated him as an afterthought. The ultimatum. James knew I preferred a simple Chardonnay, yet Sophia ordered champagne, Veuve Clicquot no less, raising her glass in a toast to new beginnings and solutions. It was classic stagecraft. Set a pleasant mood, create a sense of shared understanding, then deliver the pitch. These past weeks have been so difficult for all of us, she began, voice smooth with practiced sincerity. Family, security, peace of mind. I think I found a way for all of us to have what we need. I cut a bite of my overpriced scallop and nodded, letting her continue. You and I both know James's will created complications. The house, the vehicles, the accounts, it's all rather awkward. Not what he would have wanted if he'd been thinking clearly. I kept my face neutral as she delicately sipped her champagne. I've spoken with an excellent estate attorney, she went on. He believes we could contest the will easily. Stress, prior health issues, possible diminished capacity. But legal battles are messy, and Lucas doesn't need that. Absolutely not. I agreed calmly, waiting for the real proposal. She leaned in, voice dropping to a confidential whisper. So, I have a better solution. You transfer the house and vehicles back to me as James's widow. In return, I guarantee you regular time with Lucas. Every other weekend, major holidays. I'll even put it in writing. Her audacity nearly broke my composure. She was offering visitation with my own grandson. Rights I already had, as payment for surrendering everything James had entrusted to me. That's quite a proposition, I managed, taking another slow sip. I know. It's generous, she said, mistaking my silence for hesitation. Most women would fight for everything, but I value your relationship with Lucas. And frankly, I could use the help occasionally. Occasionally, I echoed, noting the revealing choice of words. Well, single motherhood is demanding, she sighed theatrically, and I do have my career to consider. Eventually, I'll want to rebuild my personal life. Guaranteed childcare would be tremendously helpful. There it was, the real motive. Not Lucas's well-being, but convenient childcare to free her time with Richard. What about Lucas's trust fund? I asked lightly. Would that remain as James arranged it? A flicker of irritation crossed her face. That's unnecessarily complicated. As his mother, I should manage those funds. Children's needs change. They certainly do, I agreed, thinking of every need she'd overlooked in recent weeks. Sophia slipped a folded document across the table with the confidence of someone who believed she held all the cards. My attorney drafted a simple agreement, she said. Clean, straightforward. Everyone wins. I scanned the language, an airtight plan to undo everything James had set in motion. And what about Arizona? I asked evenly. Would Lucas and I still have visits if you moved? Her expression softened into feigned regret. The Arizona trip may become permanent. Richard has opportunities there. Excellent private schools for Lucas. A fresh start for everyone. In that moment, her entire strategy clicked into place. Distance me, secure the assets, and rebuild her life, far from anyone who knew James or questioned her parenting. I'll need to think about this, I said, folding the document and slipping it into my purse. Perhaps Thomas should review it since he's familiar with James's wishes. Her smile tightened. I wouldn't involve Thomas. He's rather old-fashioned about these matters. My attorney assures me this is completely standard. Even so, I replied calmly, a decision this important deserves careful consideration. The contingency plan. James had always told me, never sign anything without a proper review. Invoking his advice left Sophia no room to argue. She simply smiled, signaled for the check, and added a quiet threat. Of course, take a few days. But Eleanor, this really is the best solution for everyone. Fighting me will only hurt Lucas in the long run. The hint of menace hung in the air as she paid for our extravagant meal, almost certainly with James's credit card. I thanked her politely, promised to consider her proposal, and drove home, my hands finally trembling on the wheel. The audacity, the manipulation, the cold plan to separate Lucas from everything that connected him to his father. I called Thomas the moment I pulled into the driveway. She's planning to take Lucas to Arizona permanently, I said without preamble. And she offered me a devil's bargain. Sign over the house and accounts in exchange for permission to see my own grandson. Perfect timing, Thomas replied, surprising me. It's exactly what we needed. Bring the document to my office first thing tomorrow. It's time for the next phase. Morning light spilled across Thomas Bennett's desk as he read the agreement, coffee cooling beside him. She actually put this in writing, he said, shaking his head. Yellow highlighter marked each damning clause. This is essentially a confession. She's offering visitation with Lucas only if you transfer assets that are legally yours. Textbook coercion. I pointed to a section mentioning reasonable visitation regardless of primary residence. That shows intent to move Lucas away. Premeditation, Thomas agreed, adding another highlight. Combined with the evidence you've gathered, this is powerful, he continued. I leaned back, absorbing his words. So what happens now? Thomas set down the marker, expression turning serious. It's time to execute the contingency plan James prepared. He hoped it wouldn't be necessary, but he anticipated exactly this. From a drawer, he pulled a sealed envelope marked Emergency Protocol in my son's familiar handwriting. My chest tightened at the sight. James left detailed instructions, Thomas explained. If Sophia ever tried to separate Lucas from you or showed signs of neglect, we file for an emergency custody modification. Custody modification? I repeated, stunned. Temporary custody first, Thomas clarified. Given the documented pattern, neglect, unstable routines, emotional stress, a judge could award you temporary guardianship while a longer-term arrangement is decided. I hesitated. I'm 65. Would the court really choose me over his mother? Age isn't disqualifying, Thomas said firmly. This isn't about calling Sophia an unfit parent. It's about demonstrating that her choices are harming Lucas's emotional well-being during a critical period of grief. He reviewed the evidence, my detailed journal of her absences and broken promises, security footage of late-night visits with Richard, teacher statements about missed conferences and unfinished homework, notes from Lucas's counselor describing anxiety and regression, photos from the Miami trip where Lucas was left with hotel staff, and now the signed document, proof she was willing to barter her own child for property. We need one final step, Thomas said, a neutral evaluation of Lucas's home environment and emotional state. I've arranged for a court-approved child psychologist to meet with him at school tomorrow. Routine procedure. Sophia won't suspect a thing. The precision of James's foresight broke my heart. How long had he carried these worries? How much had he seen before deciding such drastic measures might be needed? When will we file the petition? I asked quietly. As soon as we have the psychologist's report, likely within 48 hours, Thomas replied, his voice softening. I left his office holding the envelope marked Emergency Protocol, the weight of my son's final plan heavy in my hands. James had trusted me to protect Lucas, and now the moment had come to keep that promise. The emergency hearing. Eleanor, are you prepared for what comes next? Thomas asked quietly. Sophia will not take this lying down. I pictured Lucas's small face when he returned from Miami, the way he clutched his father's photo while trying not to cry. I thought of James, who had foreseen this very moment and trusted me to protect his son. I'm prepared, I said firmly. Good. Maintain your usual approach. If Sophia presses for an answer about her proposal, tell her you're still reviewing details. Meanwhile, I'll finalize the emergency petition. As I left Thomas's office, a text arrived from Sophia. Need your answer by tomorrow. Arizona arrangements pending. Important opportunity for Lucas's future. The attempt at urgency only strengthened my resolve. Still reviewing. Have some questions about the visitation schedule. Can we discuss tomorrow evening? I replied. Her response came instantly. Fine. 7 p.m. at the house. Richard's attorney will be present. Not her own lawyer, not James's, but Richard's. Another telling detail for my growing record. That afternoon, I helped Lucas with homework. He told me quietly how his mother had forgotten to pack his lunch, then scolded him for calling during her important meeting. I added it to my journal, the slump of his shoulders, the careful way he minimized her reaction. Later, Thomas phoned with news. The school psychologist met with Lucas today, he said. Preliminary findings show elevated anxiety, especially about being sent to Arizona, and strong attachment to you as his primary support. Is that enough? I asked, hope rising. Combined with everything we've gathered, yes. I'll file the emergency petition in the morning. The judge I've requested usually rules within 24 hours. Should I tell Lucas? Not yet. Let him keep his normal routine. If the judge rules in our favor, a child specialist will explain things appropriately. I slept little that night, torn between hope and worry. By morning, my resolve was unshakable. This was no longer about honoring James's wishes. It was about a vulnerable child whose mother's choices deepened his grief. At 10:17 a.m., Thomas called. The petition is filed. The hearing is tomorrow at 9. Sophia will be served this afternoon. Judge Carlton flagged her Arizona plans as a potential flight risk. I asked whether to keep our evening meeting with Sophia. Absolutely not, Thomas said. Once she's served, all communication goes through attorneys. Stay somewhere safe tonight. She may react strongly. What about Lucas? The petition includes a provision for him to remain in his current home environment with you until the hearing, Thomas assured me. Hours later, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen. Sophia's voice burst through, sharp and furious. How dare you try to take my son from me after everything I've done for you? My lawyers will crush this. You'll never see Lucas again when this is over. Following Thomas's advice, I said nothing. I held the phone away and let her fury run its course, each word confirming exactly what we already knew. The evidence, and James's plan, were working. The morning of the hearing. Eventually, Sophia realized I wasn't going to rise to her late-night threats. Are you there? Say something, she demanded over the phone. On the advice of counsel, I can't discuss this matter directly with you, I said calmly. I'll see you at the hearing tomorrow. You'll regret this, she hissed before the line went dead. I leaned against the kitchen counter, finally letting the exhaustion wash over me. The court server had delivered the petition at 2 p.m., just as planned. Lucas, thankfully, was with me after school, spared from his mother's inevitable outburst. That evening, he sat at the dining room table working on math, blissfully unaware of the legal storm gathering. Grandma, can we have spaghetti for dinner? The kind with your special sauce? Of course, sweetheart, I replied, grateful for the normalcy. As we cooked, I watched his face for signs of worry. Mom sounded mad on the phone, he said suddenly. Is she mad at me? No, absolutely not, I assured him. Sometimes grown-ups get frustrated about work. It has nothing to do with you. He nodded, half relieved. She said we'd get ice cream tomorrow to make up for missing dinner. But she forgot last time she promised that. Another quiet entry from my journal. Broken promises that an 8-year-old now expected. After Lucas was asleep, I called Thomas. The school psychologist met with Lucas today, he said. Preliminary findings show elevated anxiety about Arizona and a clear attachment to you as his primary support. Combined with the other evidence, it's enough. I'll file first thing in the morning. The judge usually rules within 24 hours. Should I tell Lucas? Not yet. Let his routine stay normal. If the judge rules in our favor, a child specialist will explain everything. I barely slept. By morning I was tired but resolute, dressed in the conservative navy suit Thomas had recommended to convey stability and trust. Why are you dressed up, Grandma? Lucas asked over breakfast. I have an important meeting, I said gently. Mrs. Wilson will take you to school today, and either Mom or I will pick you up later. He accepted it with the easy flexibility of childhood, more worried about his favorite shirt than the day's unusual plans. I hugged him a little longer at the neighbor's door, wishing I could shield him from what lay ahead. The courthouse was all marble and echoes. Thomas met me at the entrance, his expression steady but his eyes tight with concern. Sophia is already inside with her attorney, Gerald Winters from Mitchell and Blackwell, he said quietly. One of the most aggressive family lawyers in the city. I wasn't surprised that Richard had arranged top representation. Improves our chances, I asked. Judge Carlton is fair but cautious, Thomas replied. The evidence is strong, but temporary custody is still an extraordinary step. He squeezed my arm. Stay focused on Lucas. That's what matters. I nodded, heart pounding, ready to keep the promise I had made to both James and his son. The ruling. Remember, Thomas said quietly as we entered the courthouse. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about making sure Lucas has the support he needs. Inside, Sophia sat beside a sharply dressed attorney, her hair pulled back in a modest style, and a framed photo of James and Lucas displayed like a prop. She glanced at me with icy hostility before shifting to a mask of wounded confusion. The performance had begun. At exactly 9 a.m., Judge Carlton, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, took the bench. This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary custody of minor child Lucas Reynolds, she announced. I have reviewed the petition and supporting documentation. Let's proceed efficiently. For the next hour, Thomas presented our case with quiet precision. Documented neglect and repeated absences, the Miami trip where Lucas was left with strangers, the psychologist's report showing Lucas's anxiety, and finally, the signed proposal in which Sophia offered me access to Lucas only if I surrendered the assets James had left. Sophia's attorney countered smoothly, portraying me as a meddling mother-in-law exploiting a grieving widow, insisting that my careful notes showed unhealthy obsession. The Arizona move represents a fresh start, he argued, not abandonment. When it was my turn, I focused only on Lucas. I'm not asking to replace Sophia as his mother, I said steadily. I'm asking for temporary measures so his needs remain the priority during this vulnerable time. The evidence shows other priorities are taking precedence, Judge Carlton asked pointed questions of both sides, her expression unreadable. Then she disappeared into chambers to deliberate. The hour-long wait in the hallway felt endless. Sophia and her attorney whispered furiously at one end, while Thomas and I sat in silence at the other. When the bailiff finally called us back, my legs felt like lead. Judge Carlton wasted no time. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, she said firmly, I find sufficient cause for emergency intervention. Temporary guardianship of minor child Lucas Reynolds is granted to Eleanor Reynolds for a period of 60 days, during which a full family evaluation will be conducted by court-appointed specialists. I exhaled in relief as she outlined the conditions. Sophia to have supervised visitation 3 times a week. Neither party may remove Lucas from the jurisdiction. A comprehensive family assessment will begin immediately. Across the courtroom, Sophia's careful facade shattered. Her face flushed with fury as she turned to her lawyer, whispering accusations and demanding an appeal. Judge Carlton raised an eyebrow. Miss Jensen, your reaction to this ruling concerns me. I strongly advise you to focus on demonstrating the mature parenting your son needs, rather than personal grievances. With a sharp strike of the gavel, court was adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Sophia blocked our path, makeup streaked with angry tears. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won. You have no idea what's coming. Thomas stepped between us. Miss Jensen, all communication must go through counsel from this point. We'll coordinate Lucas's pickup from school and arrange the first supervised visit. Her attorney gently guided her away, leaving the hallway silent again. I leaned against the wall, the weight of the moment settling in. The court had validated James's concerns. Lucas would be protected, at least for now. What happens next? I asked softly. Thomas touched my shoulder. We pick up Lucas from school, explain the situation with his counselor, and start building a stable routine. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a deep, steady breath. James's plan had worked. Lucas was safe. Today, and, I hoped, for the future, we were finally free to build. The calm before the next storm. The hard part is just beginning, Eleanor, Thomas had warned. But for today, Lucas is safe. 6 weeks after the emergency custody hearing, my grandson and I rocked gently on the porch swing. His small legs dangled above the floor as he stared at the driveway, where his mother's car would normally pull in for supervised visits. Visits she'd attended only sporadically. Grandma, is Mom ever coming back? He asked quietly. My heart ached. Your mom is going through a difficult time, I said, echoing the family therapist's advice. She loves you, but sometimes adults struggle with big changes. Lucas nodded with a wisdom beyond his 8 years. Like when Dad died and she started staying out late, children notice so much more than we realize. Something like that, I agreed, pulling him close. How are you feeling about everything? Sad sometimes, but not scared anymore. Scared? I prompted gently. When Mom talked about Arizona, I was scared all the time, he admitted. I didn't want to leave my school and friends. And I didn't like Richard. He talks to me like I'm a baby, or like I'm not even there. Each revelation went straight into my growing documentation. The court-appointed evaluator had been meeting with Lucas weekly, and the final custody hearing was just days away. During these weeks, stability had begun to heal him. Regular meals, consistent bedtimes, predictable routines. But Sophia's visits told a different story. At first, she arrived resentful, spending most of her time on the phone or asking Lucas leading questions. Is Grandma mean to you? Are you happy? Then came cancellations, 2 visits in a row, followed by a sudden shift to expensive gifts and grand promises of future adventures. The most telling incident came 3 weeks ago, when she arrived with Richard Harlow in tow, trying to bypass the court order specifying who could be present. When the visitation supervisor refused to admit him, Sophia stormed out, leaving Lucas in tears and ending the visit altogether. She hadn't shown up for the next 2 scheduled visits at all. Do you think you'll feel ready for the talk with the judge next week? I asked gently. I guess so, Lucas said, swinging his feet. Miss Abernathy says I just have to tell the truth about what makes me feel safe and happy. That's exactly right, I assured him, though my own stomach tightened at the thought of him facing such adult questions. The next morning, Thomas's call broke the quiet. His normally calm voice carried urgency. Eleanor, Sophia's attorney, just filed a motion to dismiss the custody case. They want an immediate return to the original arrangement with no restrictions. My grip tightened on the phone. On what grounds? They're claiming the evidence was fabricated, that you manipulated Lucas into making statements against his mother, and that Sophia's choices were reasonable reactions to grief. My heart sank. Do they have a chance? Ordinarily, no, Thomas said. Our documentation is meticulous. The psychological evaluation is strong. But there's a complication. Judge Carlton is on medical leave. The motion has been reassigned to Judge Blackwell, an old acquaintance of Richard Harlow. The implications hit hard. Influence and money could undermine weeks of careful preparation. What can we do? I'm filing counter motions immediately, Thomas replied. Then he hesitated. There's something else. Our investigator confirms that Sophia and Richard have placed deposits on property in the Cayman Islands, a jurisdiction with limited enforcement of U.S. custody orders. The threat crystallized. If Sophia regained even temporary custody, she could take Lucas out of the country, beyond the reach of U.S. courts. She wouldn't, I began, then stopped. Of course she would. A final choice. Everything I'd witnessed over the past weeks confirmed what I already knew. Sophia saw Lucas less as a child with needs and more as an accessory to the life she wanted. Thomas assured me he was adding safeguards. I've requested an emergency hearing with Judge Carlton when she returns next week. In the meantime, document everything. Every call, every reaction from Lucas, anything unusual. That evening, while Lucas worked on a school project about family traditions, my phone chimed. We need to talk privately. No lawyers. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park. Come alone or the deal's off. I sent the message to Thomas immediately. This is exactly the kind of end run that worries me, he warned. Still, we agreed to meet. Thomas nearby but unseen, and my recorder running. Legal in our state. The park was nearly empty when I arrived. Sophia sat rigid on a bench, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Thank you for coming, she said, voice unexpectedly subdued. I imagine your attack dog lawyer advised against it. I'm here because anything that helps Lucas is worth exploring, I replied, neutral but alert. After a long silence, she finally spoke. I'm dropping the custody case. I blinked. What? You heard me. I'm signing over full custody to you. No more court battles, no more supervised visits, no more evaluations. She removed her sunglasses. For the first time, I saw fatigue instead of calculation. Why? Richard and I are moving to Grand Cayman next month. He secured rights to develop a major resort. We'll be there at least 3 years. Lucas needs stability and structure. I can't give him that right now. Her tone was almost clinical, as if she were discussing a business deal, not leaving her only child. So you're just walking away? I prefer to think of it as making the mature choice, she said calmly. I'm putting Lucas's needs first. You can keep the house, the accounts, everything. Richard's project will make those look like pocket change. I'll send support, call when I can. Maybe he can visit during school holidays. The casual way she shifted from mother to distant relative made my heart ache, but beneath the sadness was deep relief. Lucas would finally have the stability he deserved. What do you want from me? I asked. A clean break. No contested hearings, no financial investigations, no intrusion into my personal life. Sign the agreement my lawyer is drafting and Lucas stays with you. I kept my expression neutral, but inwardly I marveled at how precisely James had foreseen this. His careful planning, transferring assets, documenting her behavior, creating a trust for Lucas, had anticipated this moment. 1 week later, I sat in Judge Carlton's chambers as she reviewed the voluntary custody agreement Sophia had signed before leaving for Grand Cayman. This is an unusual resolution, the judge remarked, scanning the document. Ms. Jensen is surrendering all parental rights except for limited visitation at your discretion. She believes it's in Lucas's best interest while she relocates internationally, I said, using the careful wording Thomas had suggested. Judge Carlton's eyes were sharp, but she nodded slowly. And you're prepared to assume full legal guardianship of your grandson at your age, Mrs. Reynolds? Without hesitation, I replied. Lucas needs stability, love, and a connection to his father's memory. I can provide all three. After a long moment, the judge signed the final order. Based on the evidence presented and Miss Jensen's voluntary relinquishment, custody of Lucas Reynolds is hereby granted to Eleanor Reynolds, with support payments and limited visitation as outlined. James's careful foresight had been vindicated. Lucas was safe. And for the first time since that terrible midnight phone call, I felt the quiet certainty that my grandson's future was truly secure. A new chapter. Outside the courthouse, Lucas safe at home with our kind neighbor, I finally let the reality sink in. At 65, I had become, in every way that mattered, my grandson's parent. James would be proud, Thomas said quietly as we walked to our cars. He protected Lucas the only way he could, by entrusting him to you. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Lucas and I planted a memorial garden in the backyard. Roses, lavender, and James's favorite wildflowers surrounded a stone bench where we could talk to Dad whenever Lucas wanted. "Do you think Dad knew Mom would leave?" he asked, patting soil around a young rose bush. I chose my words carefully. "I think your father knew that sometimes adults make choices based on what they want, not what children need. He wanted to be sure you'd always have someone who put you first." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "I miss Dad every day, but I don't miss how things were after he died. When Mom was always angry or gone, I hugged him gently. Your dad made sure you'd be cared for. And I promise you always will be." That night, after Lucas was asleep, I opened the small box Thomas had delivered following the final custody orders. Inside was a single envelope marked in James's handwriting. "When it's resolved. Mom," the letter began, "if you're reading this, you've done what I couldn't. Protected Lucas from a situation I saw deteriorating but couldn't fix in time. I watched Sophia's priorities shift. I knew our son would eventually become collateral damage in her pursuit of the life she really wanted. I'm sorry for the burden, but I knew you would act without hesitation. Tell Lucas stories about me, the good ones and the mistakes. Show him that even when we see the truth late, we do the best we can with the time we have. I love you both more than words can say." Tears blurred the page. James had trusted me with his most precious legacy, and now his faith was fulfilled. 3 years passed. "Grandma, I got the lead in the school play." 11-year-old Lucas burst through the door, backpack thudding to the floor. "Our town, I'm playing George Gibbs." "That's wonderful," I said, scanning the script. "Did you know your dad played the same role when he was your age?" Lucas's eyes widened. "Ms. Larson told me. Can we find the program?" "I still have it in the attic," I smiled. "Your father would be thrilled to see you following in his footsteps." He grinned, then hesitated. "Should we tell Mom about the play?" It wasn't the first time he'd wondered. Sophia's promised video calls had dwindled to rare, awkward birthday messages, and then silence. Through Thomas's minimal professional contact, we knew she and Richard had married and were now developing resorts in Thailand. Her support checks arrived like clockwork, but never a note inside. "We can send her the dates if you'd like," I offered gently. "It's your choice." He considered, and then shook his head. "Maybe not. She didn't answer when I wrote about the science fair. I think I just want you, the Wilsons, and Uncle Thomas there." "Then that's exactly who will be there," I said, heartful. As Lucas bounded upstairs, I straightened the photos on the refrigerator. Karate trophies, science projects, birthday laughter. This house, once a battleground, now pulsed with quiet joy. James's careful planning, Lucas's resilience, and every patient step along the way had transformed tragedy into a new family constellation. Not the one we imagined, but solid and true. Love in the end had the final word. Love as the last inheritance. The years that followed told their own quiet story, a timeline of healing and growth. That first year after gaining full custody was anything but easy. Lucas wrestled with nightmares, sudden anger, and difficult questions no child should have to ask. Why doesn't Mom want to talk to me? Did I do something wrong? If Dad were alive, would she have stayed? With the help of a gifted child psychologist, we navigated each painful conversation. I learned to validate his feelings without condemning Sophia, to help him understand that her choices reflected her own limits, not his worth. Now, 3 years later, the change was remarkable. Lucas's grades shone. His friendships were steady. The anxious 8-year-old had become an 11-year-old brimming with confidence and quiet resilience. The house that had once been James's, and briefly only mine, was now truly ours. Lucas's art projects shared wall space with my tentative watercolors. His soccer cleats sat beside my gardening tools. Photo albums documented camping trips, holiday dinners, and birthday parties alive with laughter. At 68, I had discovered unexpected vitality in this second round of parenting. Lucas's energy kept me active. His needs gave each day purpose. I'd even begun tentative new steps of my own. A kind widower from the community theater where Lucas took acting classes. Nothing serious, just a gentle reminder that life still offers surprises. One evening, my phone chimed. A text from Thomas. Court approved the college fund restructuring. All set for Lucas's future education, exactly as James wanted. Another piece of my son's meticulous planning had locked into place. Despite Sophia's early attempts to seize control of the educational trust, James's foresight had left it legally untouchable. As I prepared dinner, memories drifted in. The midnight phone call that shattered our world, the slow revelation of Sophia's true character, the patient strategy that kept Lucas safe. In those first raw weeks after James's death, I could never have imagined the life we would build from that loss. The grief remains. It always will, but it now lives alongside joy and genuine connection. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Wilson holding a covered dish. "I made too much lasagna again," she said, her usual excuse for the meals she faithfully shared. "And Bill wants to know if Lucas is still coming to help with the birdhouse this weekend." "Absolutely," I smiled, accepting the dish. "Come in, he's got news about the school play." Their easy laughter filled the house as Lucas bounded downstairs to share his excitement. Community, I thought. A chosen family woven around us. Later, when the house was quiet, I opened the memory book we'd created during that first hard year. Photos of James, Lucas's handwriting describing favorite memories, cards of encouragement from friends. On the final page was a line from James's last letter. "Tell him stories about me, not just the good ones, the real ones, about my mistakes and how I tried to fix them." I had honored that request. Lucas knows the whole truth of his father, a good man who recognized his marriage was unraveling, who saw how it might hurt his son, and who acted decisively to protect what mattered most. When Lucas once asked why his dad changed the will without telling Sophia, I explained simply, "Your father wanted to be sure someone would always put you first. That's all." Outside, the garden James loved glowed in the last golden light. Roses he planted bloomed again, proof that life continues its cycles regardless of our losses. Inside, his son slept peacefully, surrounded by photos of the father who had loved him enough to safeguard his future. James couldn't have predicted every twist, the sudden death, Sophia's quiet departure, the years of careful rebuilding, but he understood character. He saw the warning signs and left us a plan. That plan gave Lucas more than financial security. It gave him the gift of a steady childhood and me the privilege of a second chance at motherhood. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks, helping Lucas rehearse lines for his play, water aerobics for my stubborn knees, a meeting with Thomas about long-term planning. Ordinary life, precious in its very ordinariness. Tonight, in the calm of the home we built together, I feel only gratitude. For James's wisdom, for Lucas's courage, and for the enduring truth that love, not loss, is the final inheritance.